Back when the PlayStation 1 was new, I played a JRPG that I don't know the name of, and I don't know a whole lot of details for. It was, well, a interesting one. It had a generic plot. You were a brave warrior trying to save a damsel in distress. There was a big dragon like monster near the beginning. It had pre rendered backgrounds. And one of the rooms that really stuck out to me was after crossing a bridge to make your way into this castle or cave system, there was a very gloomy, very dimly lit room with a bridge overhang that you could pass through to progress further into the structure. And that's really all I've got. Over the 20 years since then, occasionally I have gone back and tried to find this old game, and I've come up short every time. And not for lack of trying, but the PlayStation 1 RPG library is huge. I think it's over 200 games, and I haven't had the time to sit through all of them and screen them all for the exact images that I'm remembering from back then. And I've tried a few, it's not Final Fantasy, it's not uh, Legend of the Dragoon or anything. It's definitely not like a horror game like Parasite Eve, but I have tried, I have looked, and I've come up short. So if any of you guys out there have an RPG recommendation for the PS1 that helps me find this old game I'm looking for, I'd appreciate it a lot. Hey there, kiddos. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, hoping that you are having a great day. And in today's video, I'm sitting back in the very squeaky chair, relaxing and having a little conversation with all of you guys that has basically nothing to do with the stuff I was talking about during the intro, except for the RPG part. Today we're talking about RPGs. Smaller RPGs, weeb RPGs. I was going to grab some of the White Wolf ones, but they are buried under a stack over there, and I did not feel like digging them out. Whereas these were just sitting on the top, so that's what I got. Today we're talking about RPGs, specifically smaller role-playing games with one or two books, a very small audience based on perhaps a limited concept or franchise, and all that jazz, and asking the question whether or not they can survive with such a small audience. And the answer may surprise you. This conversation was spurred on because yesterday, I think it was, I found out that there is a new Ghost in the Shell role-playing game coming out. Next month they are going to start a crowdfunding for it on BackerKit. And of course I'm super interested in that. Not because it's an anime RPG, but because it's a Ghost in the Shell role-playing game, and I am a huge fan of that franchise. I love it so much. I'm super looking forward to the new anime, and at some point I would like to talk about the franchise more broadly here on the channel for you guys. But saying that they are crowdfunding an RPG for Ghost in the Shell, of course, got me thinking, well, realistically speaking, how big of an audience can you have for a cyberpunk RPG based on a very limited concept, working as new recruits of Section 9 and doing all the police espionage, cyber terrorist stuff there? And then, of course, that got me thinking that there's a lot of other RPGs, especially like in the Weebosphere, that are also very limited in scope and have very small potential audiences, but they come out anyway. They get released into the public regardless. So this goes to show that even a limited, even a very small potential audience can still bring you a product that will sell. From what I understand, actually the Konosuba one sold pretty well. It helps that this one's actually pretty solid. Overall, I think it does need to be asked, can a small fan base keep an RPG alive? Well, the answer is complicated. No. No, a small, dedicated, loving fan base is not enough to keep an RPG alive. I hate to be the one who breaks it to you, but the world of tabletop role-playing games is already crammed full as it is. And there's a lot of competition, not just D&D and Pathfinder, but a bunch of other smaller games always teaming to get as many of the various players out there as they can stuck to their one rule system. Not just Big Eye Small Mouth and the White Wolf games and old school Renaissance, which is interesting to say the least, but also a bunch of games like this, which do sell. They have a book or two that sells really well, in fact. But at the end of the day, that's about all it gets. And yes, these games, the Konosuba game, the Goblin Slayer, Big Eye Small Mouth, they can go for quite some time on a small audience. But that audience isn't going to bring it massive success and 13 different editions with dozens upon hundreds upon thousands of books. No. The Ghost in the Shell RPG, to answer my own question, I don't think the Ghost in the Shell RPG is going to have 5 different editions, 5 different versions, and it's going to have an entire library full of books. But here's the asterisk, here's the but. It doesn't have to. You see, the glory of JRPGs, the glory of RPGs, I did get tangled on the first thing, didn't I? The glory of tabletop role-playing games is that you don't need there to be constant releases. The cool thing about physical rulebooks like Cyberpunk Red or Dungeons and Dragons 3rd Edition is with one book alone, with just the rules and the basic information of the world you're playing in, a skilled team of game master and players can create a fantastic, amazing campaign with just one book, a bit of creativity and some tolerance of one another. You can have a game system that will last a group of people over a decade. And I can say that from experience because I've been playing here in the garage with people almost weekly with just the original rule set for Pathfinder 1st Edition. Sure, I've got a library of Pathfinder books, but we don't have to update to 2nd Edition. We can just enjoy playing what we have here already. There's no need for constant releases. And that's totally fine. And for a while there, we were playing, back are older now, but we were just playing D&D 3rd Edition for the longest time. It took us a while to switch over to Pathfinder, I'll say that. For all of us to fully switch over to Pathfinder. I was on Pathfinder pretty quick after D&D 4th Edition dropped. That's beside the point. Yes, a small group of people can keep anything alive long enough. That's just the way the fandom works. Look at the Harry Potter TCG or any of the... look at Bionicle. Look at Bionicle. Bionicle has been dead for a decade, I think. But it still has a huge, dedicated, thriving fan base that keeps it going. Even if that fan base wasn't huge, even if it was just a few thousand people as opposed to hundreds of thousands of people, it would still be thriving. Things like successful and thriving and powerful are all subjective. But at the end of the day, as long as enough people are super excited about something and exuberant enough to keep coming back for it week after week, month after month, year after year, you can say that the game can have success, even if it's not massive success. It's the same thing with like movies and TV shows. And I suppose this can go on to things like that as well, not just the RPG space. We used to call things that had failed at the box office, but found success after the release. We used to call those cult classics, where, the broader audiences didn't really care for them. Broad audiences didn't really care for movies like Willow, for instance. Willow's a good example. I could probably talk about Willow, where, I'm pretty sure it bombed at the box office back in the day. But it still has a very dedicated fan base that would love to watch more of it. Not that any more exist, or ever will exist. Ever. And the same thing is definitely true of a lot of these smaller RPGs and card games and video games, where they don't last forever. Nothing does. But they can last a lot longer than you'd think they could, even without official support. And that's the thing. You don't need a company's official support to say a game is alive and well. If White Wolf never put out another Vampire the Masquerade book, there are still people who would play the hell out of those books, right? if Wizards of the Coast never released another Dungeons and Dragons book, there'd still be people who play it. Same thing with Paizo and Pathfinder. Same thing with any video game. You know, if Nintendo stopped producing Pokemon games tomorrow, people would still play Pokemon. That's really what I'm trying to get at here, is to answer a very aggressively worded question. No, a small fan base, no matter how dedicated, couldn't possibly bring massive success to an RPG, no matter what it is. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a failure. The modern world we live in is very monetized, with a lot of people opinionating that if you don't have massive success, if you're not making the tendies, that your game is not a success. And I think that's a unfortunate way of looking at things, because a lot of what is successful now is built on something. Okay? People look at the Pokemon TCG and they see the success it has right now. They see the scalpers, the whales, and the inflated card prices on the secondary market. And some people forget that that does not exist in a vacuum. The Pokemon franchise is generational. It's been around since the late 90s. And it was not always the most expensive card game on the planet. It just wasn't. There was a time and a place where we did not care one bit about the condition of our Pokemon cards. That's just not what happened. We would rip them out of the packs, play with them unsleeved with rubber band decks in the playground with dirt and rocks and shit. They get scuffed up, dented, and busted and ripped up, even. Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, they were all like that. A lot of the success we're seeing now is built off of things like that, where people just played with the things. And too many people and too many companies assume that just because you don't have immediate, insane success with something, that must mean it's a failure. That must mean it's bad. And it's certainly true that nobody's talking bonkers about Konosuba, the tabletop RPG, or nobody's freaking out about any of the Chrono. There was a Chrono card game that came out last year that I haven't talked about. Chrono Gate, something like that. Some kind of mech-based combat game that wasn't Gundam, that I wanted to talk about because it released pretty close to when Gundam came out, and I thought it was unfortunately timed. If you know what I'm talking about, leave a comment down below. But just because things don't immediately have success doesn't mean they're bad. Doesn't mean they're a failure. Doesn't mean they are doomed forever and can't possibly thrive. Because all it takes is a handful of people who are deeply passionate about something to keep it going for a long time. Even if it's just a small group of people sitting around in a basement or a garage or someone's living room playing some role-playing games every week. That's all it takes to say that for those people, the game was quite successful. Anyway, I was rambling. This was just me reminiscing about the fact that there is just some cool stuff out there that people pass over because it's not worth money. And I think that's a shame, because if you look back at the world of card games, video games, RPGs, etc., any kind of collectible, honestly, there's a lot of stuff out there that's really cool and really cheap, really affordable, that a lot of people put their noses up at. Don't give the time of day. It is what it is. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys for watching. This was supposed to be a video about RPGs, but it ended up evolving into more. So thank you guys so much. Like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. You know the drill at this point. I'll talk to you later. Ciao.